I stood in the grand hall holding my late wife's brooch, the final token of her love, which I had just given to my daughter Clara as a wedding gift. My new son-in-law, Leo, with a condescending smile, asked, "What is this old relic?" The attendees fell silent, and my heart seized with a feeling of profound betrayal. He didn't realize I was about to gift them a luxury condominium on the Gold Coast. But his words ignited something cold within me. I decided then that my retribution would be absolute. The ballroom glittered, a universe of crystal and light. Prisms hung from the high ceiling, casting fractured rainbows over the polished floor. I stood at the main table, my fingers tracing the outline of the velvet box in my jacket. Its familiar weight was an anchor to her, my late wife Eleanor, whose spirit still shone in the jewels I was about to present to our daughter, Clara. The room was alive with the hum of conversation and the clinking of champagne flutes, the elite of Chicago circulating in bespoke suits and designer gowns. I tapped a glass, and the noise subsided. All eyes turned to me. "Tonight," I began, my voice clear despite the tightness in my chest, "we celebrate Clara and Leo. My daughter, my greatest pride." I looked at Clara, stunning in her gown, her gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "This is for you, my dear." I opened the box, revealing the brooch, a vintage spray of diamonds and sapphires that captured the light. "It was your mother's. Her love is now yours to carry." A collective sigh of admiration went through the room. I moved toward Clara, the brooch in my hand. Then Leo, my new son-in-law, leaned in, his lips curling into a smirk. "What's this, Arthur? Some dusty antique from an estate sale?" His voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and dismissive. A few guests chuckled, but the sound died quickly. My hand stopped, suspended in the air. The jewels seemed to tremble. I looked at Clara, expecting her to speak up, to defend this precious gift, to defend me. She just stared at the table, her fingers twisting the hem of her napkin. Silence. My chest constricted as if the air itself had solidified. Leo waved a hand carelessly, knocking the velvet box from my grip. It landed on the table with a soft thud, the brooch spilling out, its gems glinting like unshed tears. "Honestly, Arthur," Leo said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You could have at least bought something new." More laughter followed, bolder this time. My face flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a cold fury I hadn't felt for years. I had planned to announce the condominium, a sprawling unit overlooking Lake Michigan, my wedding gift to them. But Leo's insult, and Clara's silence, awakened something methodical and unforgiving inside me. I composed myself, forcing a smile. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said, my voice eerily calm. I turned, ignoring the pitying looks and the whispers that followed me like ghosts. The marble floor was cold beneath my shoes as I crossed the ballroom, each step a deliberate act of will. I pushed through the grand doors, and the cool night air struck my face. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel, the city lights of Chicago blurring into streaks of neon. The brooch wasn't just jewelry. It was Eleanor's soul, the last tangible piece of her I could give away. Clara's silence was a deeper wound than Leo's cruelty. How had I been so wrong about them? The question gnawed at me, sharp and persistent, as I drove away from the glittering facade of their new life. The old Lincoln Park brownstone creaked with the weight of its memories. I sat in a worn leather armchair where Eleanor used to read. A single lamp cast a warm circle of light. The air smelled of old books and faint pipe tobacco, a scent unchanged in over a decade. In my hands, I held a photograph of Eleanor and Clara laughing in our garden. I traced the worn edge, my thumb pausing on Clara's smile. That night in the ballroom was a fresh wound. Leo's sneer, Clara's downcast eyes. I set the photo down and opened an album. Every page was a testament to my sacrifices. Clara at 6, her small hand in mine on the way to school, her mother's absence a quiet space between us. I'd worked grueling hours in the loop, trading my life for the money to afford her elite schooling, her tutors, her ambitions. I found a card she made me when she was 10. "You're the best dad in the world," she'd written in uneven letters. The paper was now creased, the ink faded. A dull ache spread through my chest. Where did that little girl go? At 20, she called from university, asking for help with tuition. I sold a portion of my portfolio without a second thought. She promised to visit more often, but the calls became less frequent, her excuses more elaborate. Then she met Leo. I flipped to a photo of Clara at a charity ball, her arm linked with his. Her smile was different, practiced, remote. My calls went unanswered. Her texts were short. "Busy with Leo," she'd write, as if I were a minor obligation. I told myself it was a phase. But in that ballroom, watching her let Leo dishonor her mother's memory, I finally saw the truth. I had lost her. I stood and paced, the floorboards groaning. I had given Clara everything. My time, my energy, my devotion. In return, I was publicly humiliated, my love discarded. I slid the old card back into the desk drawer. The past was gone. I caught my reflection in a darkened window, graying hair, tired eyes, but with a new glint of determination. They thought I was a relic of the past, easily dismissed. They were wrong. It was time to remind them what I was capable of. My office in the Loop was a bastion of quiet authority. Glass walls offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline, as sharp and unyielding as the resolve hardening within me. I sat at my desk, a fortress of mahogany, and opened a drawer, pulling out a photo of Clara at her graduation. I looked at it for a long moment, then put it back. Sentiment was a luxury I could no longer afford. I called an old friend, Mark, a man who knew every secret in the city's financial sector. "Mark," I said, "I need everything you can find on Leo Vance. His business, his associates, his vulnerabilities." Mark let out a low whistle. "Give me a couple of days, Arthur. You sure you want to open this door?" My grip tightened on the phone. I've never been more certain. After hanging up, I reviewed a stack of market reports. Leo's name was tied to several high-risk, high-leverage ventures. His ambition was his greatest asset and his most glaring weakness. I began underlining the names of his primary investors, men I'd known for years, men who owed me. My pulse slowed to a steady, rhythmic beat. This was my arena, and Leo was about to learn the rules. I opened a notebook and began to map out a strategy. I would dissect his network, identify the pressure points, and then apply force. A whispered rumor, a strategically placed doubt, a called-in favor. I had built my career on meticulous planning, and this would be my masterpiece. I allowed myself a grim smile. Leo thought he was invincible. A costly assumption. I walked to the window, the city sprawling below. For the first time since the wedding, I felt in control. Trevor would pay, and Clara would finally see the true cost of her choices. The cafe in River North was a cramped space with steamed-up windows. I sat in a corner booth as a private investigator named David slid a briefcase across the table. "You wanted the details on Vance," he said, his voice raspy. "It's all in there." I opened the folder. It was a catalog of financial recklessness, hidden losses, inflated projections, and outright fraud. Leo's ambition had made him careless. My eyes landed on a photo of Leo with a notorious venture capitalist known for gutting companies at the first sign of trouble. "He's on thin ice," David said. "One good push is all it will take." But as I scanned the documents, one line made my blood run cold. An email from Leo to a friend: "Don't worry about the money. Clara's old man will always be our safety net." My daughter, reduced to a financial guarantee. Later that day, I stood outside their Gold Coast condominium. The doorman recognized me and nodded. Inside, the apartment was a sterile showcase of modern luxury, all chrome and glass, lacking any warmth. Gilded mirrors reflected the cold marble floors. Clara greeted me with a brittle smile. Leo was lounging on a white leather sofa, a drink in hand. "Arthur," he said with false warmth. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" I feigned a casual family visit, but my eyes missed nothing. Leo's arrogance, Clara's nervous energy. My gaze fell on a console table drawer, slightly ajar. Inside, I saw the corner of the velvet box from the wedding. The brooch, Eleanor's brooch, tossed in with other trinkets. I kept my expression neutral, even as a cold rage settled in my gut. Leo bragged about a new deal. "You wouldn't get it, Arthur. Your way of doing business is obsolete." I just nodded, letting him talk, letting him dig his own grave. When Clara went to the kitchen, I followed. "Is everything all right?" I asked gently. She jumped, avoiding my eyes. "Fine, Dad. Just busy." Back in the living room, Leo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and a muscle in his jaw twitched. I knew then that Mark's initial inquiries were already causing ripples. I left soon after, the PI's folder heavy in my briefcase. Leo had built his empire on a foundation of lies, and I was about to trigger the earthquake. My office was silent, the city lights glittering outside. I opened an encrypted email. The cursor blinked rhythmically. Attached was David's report, anonymized, clinical, and damning. It was addressed to the board of directors at Leo's primary lender. My finger hovered over the mouse. This was the point of no return. I thought of Clara, of the fallout that was to come. But she had made her choice. I clicked send. The sound was final. "Arthur has just declared war, but do you think he's going too far? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe to see how this story of revenge unfolds." I leaned back, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Across town, the consequences were already in motion. The board had called an emergency meeting. Leo's boss, a titan of industry named Sterling, threw the printed report on the desk. "Explain this, Vance," he commanded. Leo's blustering defense faltered under the weight of the evidence. In their condominium, Clara paced, her voice sharp as she spoke to Leo on the phone. "You told me everything was fine," she snapped. "It is fine, Clara," he retorted. "Just stay out of it." She hung up, her hands trembling. Back in my office, I refreshed a financial news site. A small headline appeared, "Vance Capital under internal review." It was the first tremor. I had drawn first blood, and the feeling was potent. A text from Mark came through, "Board is digging. Leo is on borrowed time." I allowed myself a small smile. They had no idea what was coming next. The restaurant on Michigan Avenue was an island of hushed elegance. I sat across from Leo and Clara, the crisp white tablecloth a no man's land between us. Leo tapped his fork against his plate, his eyes narrowed. "You've been awfully quiet, Arthur," he said, his tone laced with suspicion. "Not interfering in matters that don't concern you, I hope." I took a sip of water. "I'm just enjoying dinner, Leo." Clara interjected, her voice tense. "Dad, Leo's just under a lot of stress." "Don't make excuses for me, darling," Leo snapped, turning back to me. "Your father knows how this works. Or maybe he's forgotten." My grip tightened on my napkin under the table. "You seem rattled, Leo," I said, my voice deliberately calm. "It's showing." His eyes flashed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Leo, please," Clara whispered, but he ignored her. "If you have something to say, Arthur, say it." I held his gaze. "Be careful, Leo. Accusations have a way of boomeranging." The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade. Clara's face was pale. "Dad, stop," she pleaded weakly. Her loyalty to him, even now, was a fresh sting. I placed my napkin on the table. "I believe we're finished here," I said, standing. I walked out into the cool night air. His paranoia confirmed he was feeling the pressure. Good. The next blow would be the one he never saw coming. The boardroom was all polished mahogany and panoramic city views. I stood before three of Leo's most significant investors. "Gentlemen," I began, "let's discuss Leo Vance's portfolio." I slid a report across the table, highlighting inflated profits and concealed debts. "He's gambling with your money, and the house is about to fold." One of them, a man named Caldwell, looked uneasy. "He's always been aggressive." "There's a line between aggressive and reckless," I countered. "He crossed it long ago." By the end of the meeting, two of them had committed to withdrawing their capital. Caldwell promised a swift review. I knew I had one. Later that afternoon, I sat in a lawyer's office. "This document transfers the Gold Coast condominium to a charitable trust," the attorney stated. "The proceeds will establish a women's shelter in your late wife's name." I signed the paper with a steady hand. The condominium was meant to be their future. Now, it would be their lesson. The notary's stamp felt like a judge's gavel. A message from Caldwell confirmed it: they were out. The plan was working, but it wasn't complete. Leo's fall had to be absolute, and Clara had to witness the true price of her choices. Leo's office was a chaotic mess. An email from Sterling glowed on his screen: "Your position has been terminated." He slammed the laptop shut. He called Caldwell, his voice cracking with rage. "You can't do this." Caldwell's reply was ice. "The numbers don't lie, Vance. We're done." Leo hurled his phone against the wall. He stormed into the condominium, where Clara was surrounded by half-packed boxes. "They cut me loose," he spat. "You promised we were safe," she cried. "I'm handling it," he yelled back, but the words were empty. For the first time, she saw him not as a provider, but as the architect of their ruin. I sat in my brownstone, reading a news alert on my tablet: Vance Capital implodes after investor revolt. The victory was sharp, but tinged with sorrow. She was still my daughter, and she was hurting. But she had chosen her path. The next step would force her to see what she had truly lost. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick, wax-sealed envelope to Clara. She tore it open. The letter inside was a formal legal notice. The condominium, her dream home, had been sold. The funds were gone, donated to charity in her mother's name. A soft cry escaped her lips as she sank into a chair. She called Leo, her voice choked with tears. "Dad sold the condo. It's all gone, Leo." He stood amid the moving boxes, defeated. "Your father," he sneered, "always the puppet master." "This is your fault," she screamed, her voice raw. "You pushed him, and now we have nothing." He turned away, and in his silence, she felt the final foundation of their life crumble. A news alert appeared on my phone: Chicago socialites face eviction amid financial collapse. The words were clinical, final. I knew they would come to me soon, broken and desperate. But would I be there to catch them? The doorbell chimed through the quiet house. I opened it to find them on my doorstep, looking gaunt and defeated. "Arthur," Leo began, his usual arrogance gone, "we need your help." Clara clutched his arm, her eyes red-rimmed. "Dad, I am so sorry," she whispered, sinking to her knees. "I should have defended you. I should have defended Mom's brooch. Please." Her sobs echoed in the room, each one a painful blow. I saw the ghost of the little girl I adored, but I also saw the woman who had stood by silently and watched my heart break. I straightened, my voice cold and steady. "You both made your choices. Leo mocked the memory of your mother. And you, Clara, you let him." I pointed to the door. "Leave. You built this ruin. Now you must live in it." He took Clara's arm and led her out. She glanced back one last time, her eyes pleading, but my expression was stone. The door closed. Justice had been served. In the bright morning light of my lawyer's office, I signed the final document establishing the Eleanor Hayes Foundation. The millions I had once intended for Clara would now fund shelters and scholarships. It felt right, a true legacy for Eleanor's compassionate spirit. A text confirmed the funds had been transferred. For the first time in months, I felt the heavy weight on my shoulders begin to lift. As I left, my fingers brushed against an unopened letter in my coat pocket. Clara's handwriting. I hadn't read it. Her apologies couldn't erase the past. The cemetery was quiet, the air crisp with autumn leaves. I stood before Eleanor's grave and placed a perfect replica of her brooch on the cool granite. "I did it, my love," I whispered. "I protected our memory." I took out Clara's letter, holding it for a moment. Part of me wanted to know what it said, but a larger part of me knew it didn't matter. I had found my own peace. I tucked the letter back into my pocket, unopened. I turned and walked away, the crunch of gravel a steady rhythm under my feet. The anger and the need for vengeance were gone. As I passed through the gates, a sliver of blue sky broke through the clouds. A new chapter was beginning. My heart, at last, was calm.